Hi everybody. I thought it would be nice to do some poetry close readings. I'm inspired by Adam Walker on YouTube. Well, I watched a few of his videos of poetry close readings, and he described the idea of the YouTube channel and the close readings as to provide quote unquote more than a SparksNote version of poetry analysis. So I've got the complete collection of Sylvia Plath, of course, excluding the poems that Ted Hughes burned. And what I like to do is I like to keep these sort of post-it notes of the major events in Plath's life, a poet's life in general, so that I can have a better idea of the context of the poem. So, for example, we have, the very first one, Married to Hughes, and this one gives birth to son Nicholas Hughes. And yeah, it gives me a better idea. And how about we start with Leaving Early from the 25th of September, 1960. And I have a banana milk with me, so don't mind if I do. It's so good. So Leaving Early. I'm gonna read it first. Lady, your room is lousy with flowers. When you kick me out, that's what I'll remember. Me, sitting here, bored as a leopard, in your jungle of wine bottle lamps, velvet pillows the color of blood pudding, and the white china flying fish from Italy. I forget you, hearing the cut flowers sipping their liquids from assorted pots, pitchers and coronation goblets like Monday drunkards. The milky berries bow down, a local constellation, toward their admirers in the tabletop. Mobs of eyeballs looking up, and those petals or leaves you paired them with, those green striped ovals of silvered tissue. The red geraniums, I know. Friends, they stink of armpits and the involved melodies of autumn, musky as a love bed the morning after. My nostrils prickle with nostalgia. Henna hags, cloth of your cloth, they tow old water, thick as fog. The roses in the Toby jug gave up the ghost last night, high time. Their yellow corsets were ready to split. You snored, and I heard the petals unlatch, tapping and ticking like nervous fingers. You should have junked them before they died. Daybreak discovered the bureau lid littered with Chinese hands. Now I'm stared at by chrysanthemums, the size of Holofern's head, dipped in the same magenta as this Fupsy sofa. In the mirror, their doubles back them up. Listen, your tenant mice are rattling the cracker packets. Fine flour muffles their bird feet. They whistle for joy. And you doze on, nose to the wall. This mizzle fits me like a sad jacket. How did we make it up to your attic? You handed me gin in a glass bud vase. We slept like stones. Lady, what am I doing with a lung full of dust and a tongue of wood, knee deep in the cold and swamped by flowers? On the first read of a Plath poem, the feeling I often get is, oh my God, I understand nothing. And it's so lengthy, and I'm worried that, I'm just in general intimidated by the length and sort of the cryptidness of the language, the obscurity. But that's the beauty of a Plath poem, in my opinion. I appreciate her writing for its elusive quality. So let's start in the, it seems there are two quite lengthy running stanzas. Let's begin with the first. Lady, lady, your room is lousy with flowers, flowers, and lady. When you kick me out, that's what I'll remember. Me, sitting here bored as a leopard. The idea I'm immediately getting is masculine versus feminine. Here, I noted that I feel like the poem is written from a male perspective and masculine versus feminine, because here we have lady, flowers, a very feminine image, and then bored as a leopard, me bored as a leopard. Leopards, I mean, they're powerful, intimidating creatures. You get the sense of brute force, which is later on reinforced in the poem, which is why it makes me think of perhaps a more masculine perspective to the poem. And the idea that your room, not our room, and lady, it's a distant way of addressing someone, lady. It's like you call someone lady when you're on the street and some lady bumps into you and you're like, hey lady, watch where you're going. It's not something you call your partner. So what I'm getting from this poem is perhaps disillusionment and an uncoupling. You know, we have this term in the modern therapy world called conscious uncoupling, but I'm not going to get into that now. But yeah, it feels like a breakup for now, but we'll move on. Me sitting here bored as a leopard, when in your jungle, again, your room, your jungle, not our room, our jungle, not a room, a jungle, not the room, not the jungle, your room and your jungle of wine bottle lamps. Wine bottle lamps, is she an alcoholic? It makes me think of, like, Googled wine bottle lamp, and it shows me these sort of artsy, crafty lamps that almost look DIY, and the body of the lamp is, well, the likeness of a wine bottle, and then there's an actual, like, conical lamp hat over it. Velvet pillows, the color of blood pudding. Velvet pillows, I mean, it evokes a sensual image, lust, passion. And right after that, in some passages, a love bed is mentioned. Velvet pillows, the color of blood pudding. So this sense of lust, this passion is almost, there's a hint of danger in it, of forbiddenness, a sort of bloodlust, perhaps from the women in the relationship, or the feminine figure. In the white china flying fish from Italy, I forget you, hearing the cut flowers. I forget you. I forget you. So again, a sense of detachment. I forget you, hearing the cut flowers sipping their liquids from assorted pots, pitchers and coronation goblets, like Monday drunkards. So the idea, this image of drinking, of alcohol, gives me this sense of indulgence. Drunk on love is the phrase that people use. So I'm getting the sense that this female figure is quite passionate and indulgent, and she loves hard, I suppose. And it feels like the male figure, the speaker, the persona, isn't reciprocating or understanding this the same passion and wilderness, her jungle again. Thinking back, the jungle could be a metaphor, a sexual one. Poets do that a lot. Sipping their liquids. I mean, it's such an indulgent image from a sort of pots, pitchers, and coronation goblets, like Monday drunkards. You go to work on Monday. You don't get drunk on a Monday. You get drunk on the weekend. So there's, again, overindulgence. The milky berries bow down, a local constellation toward their admirers in the tabletop, so almost a sense of vanity and a desire to be looked at, to be wanted, maybe from the female figure, but this is describing the love. So maybe I'm thinking a superficial love, maybe an overly glamorized perception of rose-colored, a love looked through rose-colored lenses, perhaps by the woman who, again, she's engulfed in this sort of passion and enamored with the idea of beauty, these flowers, toward their admirers in the tabletop. I was quite struck by the fact that it's admirers plural and not admirer singular, because I was under the impression that only the woman was the one admiring the flowers, so it should be singular, right? But it says admirers, so I'm getting like a sense of performance, performative passion. And I mean, it just keeps going back to this idea of wanting to be watched, looked at, admired, and bow down. It feels like the woman is demanding a sense of dominance and control, and she's getting that control through the passion and controlling the image and the perception of the romance, the relationship between her and the masculine figure that is the speaker. So maybe she's blinding herself with love, and she's not seeing the reality that the relationship doesn't quite make sense, and that the male figure doesn't love her or is as infatuated with the relationship as she is. Mobs of eyeballs, looking up eyeballs, again, the idea of being watched, maybe being judged. Are those petals or leaves he paired them with? Those green striped ovals of silver tissue? So there's the speaker is confused about what is going on in this floral arrangement that the female figure is putting on display. They don't understand what the flowers are. They can't tell if it's a petal or a leaf, and it's like the speaker is in one world and their female subject is in another, and it's like a total detachment and separation. They're not on the same wavelength. But then the red geraniums, they're symbolic of protection. So I'm thinking perhaps the persona, the male, the masculine figure is more acquainted with the idea of putting up a wall, of being closed off and not being as indulgent, I suppose, as the feminine figure in the poem. Red geraniums, I know. The red geraniums, I know. Friends, they stink. They stink of armpits and the involved melodies of autumn, musky as a love bed the morning after. A left bed the morning after. I mean, you get these stories of, one of the partners who, after a night of intimacy, one of them wakes up in the morning, calls a cab, and sort of leaves without saying goodbye. I mean, you see it all the time in movies. Of course, I can't speak from personal experience, but maybe a sense of disillusionment, stink of armpits, and the involved melodies of autumn. Now, what I was thinking of is autumn. Autumn, I mean, I suppose it varies on where you live. Sylvia Plath lived in London at this point, but I'm not sure if London is rainy. I think it is, and perhaps in the autumn it rains a lot. I know that, again, like some places in the fall it will rain a lot, but not everywhere. I'm not sure if this is the case for London, but I'm thinking if it does rain a lot in autumn, then maybe that's also the start of pollen season, where people start getting allergies. And I'm thinking maybe the speaker is describing sort of the suffocation that the woman, that the feminine figure in this poem is bringing with her overindulgence and extreme sense of passion, perhaps over romanticization of the romantic relationship. So, melodies of autumn, pollen season, allergies from flowers that the feminine figure is obsessed with and is nurturing. These, okay. My nostrils prickle with nostalgia. Henna hags, cloth of your cloth, they tow old water, thick as fog. This I had trouble unpicking. The nostrils prickle with nostalgia. I feel like it's sort of clinging to a relationship that is long gone. And henna hags, cloth of your cloth. They tow old water, thick as fog. I'm thinking maybe the old water is, again, that relationship that is long gone, but the person is just grappling at it and trying to, maintain it and keep it up, but it just won't work out. Thick as fog. Fog, it blinds you. You can't see clearly. Okay, the next stanza, the roses in the Toby jug. The Toby jug. What a fascinating search it was, a Toby jug. I might pop the image on the screen, but basically it's a cup that's shaped with the likeness of a cartoon figurine of like an 18th century figure, usually a man with a tricone hat, if that's what it's called. And the tricone hat acts as like a spout, which is really cool. Anyway, you can search it up. It was a nice search. The roses in the Toby jug gave up the ghost last night. Gave up the ghost that's passing away, right? Gave up the ghost last night. The roses, romance, love, passion. Gave up the ghost last night. Period. High time. Period. High time. So it's like the end of the relationship is long overdue. Their yellow corsets were ready to split. Corsets, it symbolizes the sensuality because it's an undergarment of femininity. But it also has ideas of suffocation. You snored, and I heard the petals unlatch. Snored, so like a blissful ignorance and not being awake to see the reality. You snored. So the feminine figure perhaps is trapped in her own blissful ignorance of the reality of the dysfunctionality of the relationship. And I heard the petals unlatch, the petals, the love falling apart, degrading, decaying, tapping and ticking like nervous fingers, the onomatopoeia here, tapping, ticking, it's wonderful, tapping and ticking, like nervous fingers. Fingers are such intimate parts of the body, and it's expressive, and you should have dunked them before they died. So the relationship, once again, is long past its due, and it's time to be disillusioned. And the next two lines are quite nice. Daybreak discovered the bureau lid littered with Chinese hands. Daybreak discovered the bureau lid littered with Chinese hands. And what I understand by Chinese hands is perhaps Chinese characters, so writings. So I mean, Sylvia Plath, I don't think she knew Chinese. So I think for her, Chinese hands just means a sense like a foreign language that she cannot understand, or perhaps even nonsensical. Not saying that Chinese is nonsensical, but she's a poet, so it could be symbolic, representative of the idea of chaos and disorder. Daybreak discovered the bureau lid. The bureau, it's a writing desk, and I think in British English, a bureau is the name for a writing desk, and by this point, as I've annotated, she's moved to England, so there arguably she would be influenced by British language and culture. So Daybreak discovered the bureau lid. This is give me a moment as I check. Right, this is before Plath discovers Hugh's affair, but perhaps at this point the relationship is already starting to fall apart, and that's sort of what led up to the affair that Hughes had. So Daybreak discovered the bureau lit, the writing desk, littered with Chinese hands. So suddenly she gains this clarity by the light of day that the relationship actually isn't as glamorous and beautiful as she perceived it to be or made it out to be. Disillusionment. Now I'm stared at by chrysanthemums. I still haven't figured out how to pronounce that word, so I'm probably getting it wrong, but I'm just going to keep getting it wrong because I don't want to pull out an online dictionary right now. But now I'm stared at by chrysanthemums. There's no N's, just N's. Chrysanthemums, the size of Holofern's head. Beautiful and poignant and emphatic biblical reference and allusion. Because when I first read this, I did not know about the book of Judith. Later on, when I searched up about the tale of Holofernes and Judith from the book of Judith, I discovered a fascinating, I think it's called an acrophil, which is basically a text that is considered valuable but isn't, but not divinely. Someone's gonna have to Google, search that up for me. I don't remember, but it is from, it is a biblical story. I don't think it's present in many of the texts, definitely not in the Hebrew text. But the story is, it goes like this. So, Holofernes is an Assyrian general who takes over, who sieges Judith's village. And one day, she, under the guise of surrender, she seduces, she's a Jewish woman, she seduces Holofernes, and he develops desire and lust for her, and she's a cunning woman. She's resourceful, she's faithful, she's the embodiment of resistance. She's cunning, most of all. So she deceives him with her sensuality and femininity and beauty, and she ends up severing his head and becomes a hero in her village and inspires her fellow villagers to resistance. Fantastic story. There are paintings of it, and I find it brilliant. So basically, what I gleaned from this very poignant biblical image is that the feminine figure in this poem, in the story, is like Judith, so cunning, cunning, faith, and resistance is what she is symbolic of. And the man is like Holofernes, representative of barbarism and brute strength and cruelty. By chrysanthemums the size of Holofernes' head. The size of Holofernes' head. Dipped in the same magenta as this Fupsy's sofa. Again, pink. Chrysanthemums are representative of love and passion. In the mirror, their doubles back them up. Again, the image of a mirror links back to that idea of an illusion and a manipulation of reality, of the truth. Listen, your tenant mice are rattling. The cracker packets, fine flour, muffles their bird feet. They whistle for joy, and you doze on, nose to the wall. And mice in the Bible is representative of retribution. So I'm thinking that she sort of has sweet revenge on her mind, and she wants to, and sort of this desire for revenge and recompense sort of soothes her and tranquilizes her. You doze on, nose to the wall. She's completely devoid of care or concern or worry. This mizzle fits me like a sad jacket. How did we make it up to your attic? So they've become relics of the past, this relationship. You store away things that you don't really use anymore in the attic. You handed me gin in a glass bud vase. Gin is really strongly associated with the idea of drunkenness, crime, poverty. It gets you like, you know what I mean. You handed me gin in a glass bud vase. We slept like stones. Again, the idea of illusion and self-delusion, of tricking themselves, of being blissfully ignorant, maybe not blissfully, but definitely ignorant of the reality that this relationship is falling apart and will not work out and is completely dysfunctional, and that they're in separate worlds. We slept like stones in a glass bloodbath. Lady, again, calling her lady, lady. What am I doing with a lung full of dust and a tongue of wood, knee deep in the cold and swamped by flowers? A lung full of dust. It makes me think that everything, it's sort of, he's surrounded, the masculine character is surrounded by like an almost apocalyptic setting, and there's debris and dust and putrefaction just in the form of dust wafting up to his nose. That does link back to the previous stanza, the line third from last. My nostrils prickle with nostalgia. So perhaps the dust is the nostalgia. I mean, like the debris, the long gone things, the long gone romance, the dead romance. It's this dust, and it has become nostalgia. And the masculine figure his nostrils are prickled with it. A tongue of wood. Perhaps he's speechless. I struggled with this image, tongue of wood. Maybe he's not saying anything, but then wood. That's a very specific image, because it's not like tongue of concrete, stone, but wood. Wood usually has quite positive connotations of strength, wisdom, and endurance. A tongue of wood. Knee deep in the cold and swamped by flowers. Knee deep in the cold, swamped by flowers. To have a lung full of dust and swamped by flowers. Again, the idea that the relationship and the feminine figures, sort of passion and desire is suffocating the masculine figure, and he's just not reciprocating it back. That's it. I could talk more about the structure. It's just free verse, on uniform lines. She sticks to the margin this time. I say that as if she doesn't stick to the margin a lot. She always sticks to the margins. I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I've been reading too much Seamus Heaney, but because I think he does swerve out of the margins a lot. But yeah, okay. Toward their admirers and the tabletop, mobs of eyeballs looking up. Those petals or leaves you've paired them with, those green striped ovals of silver tissue, the red geraniums I know. Friends. Another very typical Sylvia Plath detail is repetition of a word. So friends. I've thought about this a lot. If I were to write a poem in the style of Sylvia Plath, there are several things I would include. One, very rich assonance and melodic quality. It often won't come in the very plain and obvious. Not in a bad way. Not that poets who write with end rhyme, like A-B is plain and obvious. This is a completely neutral remark, because Seamus Heaney writes with a lot of end rhymes, and I think he's a total master at his craft. So I'm not saying that as a derogatory thing, but she has really rich assonance and rhythm. and it's always very subtle. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be repeated words. So friends, friends. God, I'm drawing a blank of the other times she's repeated words, but I think she repeated words in I'm not even gonna try, but she does repeat a lot. Yeah, I mean, I never really do analyze her usage of assonance and rhythm and the sonic qualities of her poems, because she does it so frequently and so consistently that it doesn't really make sense to pick it out in an individual poem, because that style of writing is it's just her style, and it's quite consistent across her her writing. Again, with the punctuation. So, yeah, that's it. Maybe I'll do Seamus Heaney next. I've got, I don't have it here, but I have a book that's like a critical study of Seamus Heaney, and it's so fantastic. I don't remember who it was by, but I sort of use it as like almost like a textbook, and not in the sense that like of the monotony, not the dullness of textbook, but like the critic, the author of the book has way more experience, and he's a learned reader, and he clearly, obviously, can pick up a lot more qualities in Heaney's writing than me. And so it's always great to have that expert perspective, and then from there be able to better incorporate Heaney's certain characteristics of his writing into your own writing. It makes you a lot more intentional. So something I've been doing a lot of is our critical studies. But yeah, again, always a delight to read a Sylvia Plath poem, even though it takes me ages to decrypt one. I'd say it takes around half an hour to an hour to decrypt an average Plath poem, especially with all its obscurity. But it's wonderful. In the first read, you can never really follow, but as you go back on your second read and you unpick each word and you sort of think, okay, she's saying tree. What does that mean? It's a fantastic and marvelous process, and it's enlightening, and it's edifying and almost cathartic when you finally put it together and everything starts to fall into place, especially when you start to research the allusions and the references she makes, such as Holofernes' head. Before I knew the story of Judith and Holofernes, I was like, okay, another biblical reference, like in every highbrow author's writing. But after I researched it and I understood the story, I was like, oh my God, this single line, this single allusion and reference is so poignant, and it clears up the entire poem, and it says so much with just one allusion. So I guess that's it for today. I really enjoyed this, and yeah.